The first time I met Patricia Whitmore, she was standing in my driveway with her arms crossed, tapping her foot against the concrete like she owned the place. Spoiler alert, she didn't. I had just pulled up to my new house in Maplewood Estates, a cookie-cutter suburban HOA community where the lawns were surgically maintained and everyone's mailbox looked exactly the same. I'd been living there for exactly 3 days, and I was still unpacking boxes when I noticed a silver Mercedes SUV blocking my garage. "Excuse me," I called out, stepping out of my beat-up Honda Civic. "You're in my driveway." Patricia turned to face me, her blonde highlighted hair perfectly styled despite the humid August afternoon. She wore a crisp white tennis outfit and oversized sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, you must be the new neighbor," she said, not moving an inch. "I'm Patricia Whitmore, HOA Vice President. Welcome to Maplewood Estates." She said it the way someone might say, "Welcome to my kingdom." "Thanks," I replied, trying to keep my voice friendly. "I'm David Chen. Now, about your car." "Yes. Well, I've been parking here for years," Patricia interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. The Hendersons never minded. They understood that my driveway is simply too narrow for my Mercedes. This spot gets better shade anyway, and it's closer to the walking trail. I blinked at her, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry. What?" "This is my property. I own this driveway." "Technically, yes," Patricia said, examining her manicured nails. "But in a community like ours, we have certain arrangements. Neighborly courtesies, if you will. I'm sure you'll come to appreciate how we do things here." She patted my shoulder like I was a confused child, climbed into her Mercedes, and drove off, leaving me standing there with my mouth hanging open. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia's car appeared in my driveway every single morning. Sometimes she'd leave it there for hours while she went to yoga or her book club or whatever it was HOA vice presidents did with their time. I left polite notes on her windshield. She ignored them. I knocked on her door. She pretended not to be home, even though I could see her shadow moving behind the curtains. The 4th time I confronted her, she was walking her miniature poodle past my house. "Patricia, we need to talk about this parking situation," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. She sighed dramatically. "David, I really don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. The Hendersons were such lovely people. They knew how to be good neighbors." "Good neighbors don't steal other people's driveways." "Steal is such an ugly word," Patricia sniffed. "Besides, I've already filed a report with the HOA about your lawn. It's half an inch too long according to the community guidelines. You really should read the handbook. Page 47, subsection C. And your garbage cans were visible from the street last Thursday. That's another violation. Page 62. My jaw clenched. "Are you seriously threatening me with HOA violations because I won't let you park in my driveway?" Patricia's smile was pure poison honey. "I'm not threatening anyone, dear. I'm simply ensuring our community standards are maintained. Perhaps if you were more cooperative, I wouldn't have to be quite so thorough in my inspections." That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a reasonable person. I was dealing with a petty tyrant who'd been running this neighborhood like a personal fiefdom for so long that she genuinely believed she could do whatever she wanted. So I decided to get creative. That evening, I drove to the hardware store and spent $300. I bought the supplies I needed, watched several YouTube tutorials, and spent all of Saturday working in my driveway while Patricia watched suspiciously from her front window. By Sunday morning, my plan was complete. I installed 4 heavy-duty retractable bollards across my driveway, the kind you see protecting embassies and government buildings. They were controlled by a remote in my pocket and sat flush with the ground when retracted. When raised, they formed an impenetrable barrier of solid steel posts. Monday morning arrived, and like clockwork, Patricia came strolling toward my driveway with her car keys jingling. I watched from my living room window, coffee in hand, as she pressed her key fob and started to pull in. Then I pressed my remote. 4 steel bollards rose from the concrete with a mechanical hum, stopping exactly 2 feet in front of her Mercedes bumper. Patricia slammed on her brakes so hard her tires squealed. I walked outside, coffee still in hand, trying not to smile too broadly. Patricia rolled down her window, her face flushed crimson. "What on earth is this?" "Safety feature," I said casually. "For my private property. You know, to prevent an authorized vehicle from parking in my driveway." "This is ridiculous. You can't just—" "Actually, I can. I checked with the HOA handbook." I pulled out the thick binder I'd been studying all weekend. Page 93, subsection F. Homeowners are permitted to install security features on their property as long as they don't violate height restrictions or aesthetic guidelines. These bollards are within code. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I'll have you reported." "To yourself? You're the Vice President, Patricia. Feel free to file whatever reports you want. Meanwhile, you're blocking traffic." Behind her, 2 cars were waiting to get past. One of them honked. Patricia's face turned an even deeper shade of red as she jerked her car into reverse and peeled away down the street. For exactly 2 blissful days, my driveway remained Patricia-free. Then Thursday morning, I woke up to find a bright orange parking violation sticker on my garage door. The citation claimed my new bollards were unsightly mechanical obstructions that violated the community's aesthetic standards. The citation was signed by Patricia Whitmore, HOA Vice President. I photographed the citation, pulled out my HOA handbook, and drafted the most meticulously detailed appeal letter I'd ever written. I cited every relevant section, included photos of similar security features on 3 other properties in the neighborhood, which Patricia had apparently never noticed, and requested a formal hearing with the HOA board. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening at the community center. I arrived 15 minutes early with a folder full of documentation, printed photos, and a highlighted copy of the HOA guidelines. Patricia sat at the head table with 4 other board members, all of whom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Our HOA president, George Mitchell, was a tired-looking man in his 60s who seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the whole situation. Mr. Chen, George began, adjusting his reading glasses, "we're here to discuss your driveway security installation." "And Patricia's repeated trespassing on my private property," I added calmly, setting my folder on the table, "which is what necessitated the installation in the first place." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "That's not what this hearing is about." "Actually, it is," I said, pulling out my documentation. "I have photos showing Mrs. Whitmore's vehicle in my driveway on 14 separate occasions over the past 3 weeks. I have copies of 4 written requests asking her to stop, and I have a recording from my doorbell camera where she explicitly states she's been parking in my driveway for years and has no intention of stopping." I played the video on my phone. Patricia's voice came through crystal clear. "I've been parking here for years. The Hendersons never minded." George pinched the bridge of his nose. "Patricia, is this true?" "The Hendersons had an understanding." "The Hendersons don't own that property anymore," George interrupted, his voice weary. "Mr. Chen does, and he has every right to install security features to protect his property." He looked at me. "Your bollards are within code." "Yes, sir. Section 93F. George shuffled through his papers, found the section, and nodded slowly. "The citation is dismissed. Mrs. Whitmore, you are not to park in Mr. Chen's driveway again. Is that clear?" Patricia's face went through several shades of red and purple. She gathered her papers with shaking hands and stormed out of the community center without another word. 2 weeks later, I was checking my mail when my neighbor from across the street, an elderly woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, came over with a plate of cookies. "I heard what happened at the board meeting," she said, grinning. "Patricia's been parking in the Hendersons' driveway for 3 years. They were too intimidated to say anything. She's been bullying people in this neighborhood for as long as I can remember. Why didn't anyone report her?" Mrs. Rodriguez shrugged. "She's the vice president. She controls the violations. Cross her, and suddenly your roses are the wrong shade of pink, or your fence is 1/8 of an inch too tall. You're the first person who actually stood up to her." As it turned out, I wasn't the only one. At the next HOA meeting, 3 other homeowners filed formal complaints about Patricia's abuse of power. By the end of September, Patricia Whitmore was no longer the HOA vice president. She was voted out in a special election, replaced by George's wife Margaret, who had absolutely zero interest in power trips or parking in other people's driveways. These days, my driveway bollards mostly stay retracted. I only raise them when I want to remind myself that sometimes the best way to deal with a bully isn't to back down. It's to stand your ground, know your rights, and install 400 pounds of steel between them and your property. Patricia still lives in the neighborhood. She doesn't look at me when she drives past. Her Mercedes remains in her own driveway, where it belongs. And every time I press that remote and hear the satisfying hum of those bollards rising from the concrete, I smile. Best $300 I ever spent.